Now, we've been able to add all the error messages and we tested it on the browser. Now, the next thing we need to do is we need to send this data that we got from the input field. We need to send it to the database. But we can do that using PHP, which is going to send it to the MySQL database that we have. But before we do that, we need to use what we call AJAX. So AJAX stands for asynchronous JavaScript and XML. AJAX is a technology that helps us to load data from the server without browser page refreshed or without refreshing the or reloading the browser. What this means is if an AJAX function or an AJAX request is made, it does not prevent other functions from being carried out in the background. So if something is being done in the background, the AJAX function will not stop it, or the function that is being performed in the background will not be halted until the AJAX function is complete. So with that, with the AJAX function, you can perform other functions in the background. So we're going to be using that to send the data to the PHP file, which will then save it into the database. Now, for this, we are going to use the AJAX method, which is a $.ajax. Then we are going to have our code inside of that AJAX method. Now, also we should understand that it takes in some parameters. We're going to see the parameters that we need for this AJAX method. So let's start by writing it out. So the first thing that we need to do, and we are doing this only when the Boolean value is true, because we checked earlier that when we have errors, we set the Boolean values to false. Now, what happens then if the Boolean values are true? So we're going to say if valid is equal to true. That means we want this AJAX request to be made if the valid or the Boolean value is true, because when the Boolean values are false, that means we have errors. So if the values or the Boolean values are true, then we should perform the AJAX request. But the first thing we need to do before we start writing the AJAX method is to store our values inside a variable, or we store them inside an object, because AJAX method also is an object in JavaScript. So what we do is we create a variable, a form, we can call it form underscore data. Then we use it to create an object. Now the object we are creating, we hold all the data. Now in JavaScript, an object usually have a key and a value. It comes with a key and a value. So for the form, for the first name, we're going to have a key, which we'll call first name, and it's going to take in this variable that we have here, which stores or which takes in the input value. It's going to take it as the value. So we separate by comma. So it takes in the key, first name, and the value, which is the variable from here, is going to take it as the value. So we have a key value pair. We do the same for the last name, which is going to take last name, the email, and lastly the password. Now we don't need a comma here because this is the last value. We are not inserting any other values. So we've been able to store these values inside an object. Then when we inside the add AJAX method, we're going to call this form data as the data that will be passed. Now to call the AJAX method, we use a $.ajax. Then we enclose it with brackets. Then inside we are going to pass in the curly braces. Then the next thing we need to do is we need to pass in the different parameters. We are going to be passing in 4 parameters. The first parameter is the URL. The URL specifies the URL to send the request to. That means the URL that our data will be sent to. Then the next one is going to be the data itself, which is this data that we stored inside the object called form_data. Then the third one is going to be the type. Is it going to be a post or a GET request? But what we are going to be using is we are using a post request because we are going to be sending data from the form to the database. Then the last one is going to be a function, a success function. That is the callback that is going to be executed once the data has been sent. So we start with the URL. The URL for this is going to be insert.php, but we've not created that yet. That is the file that will contain the PHP code that will send the data into the database. So we'll just include it here, then later we create it inside the scripts folder. Now to do that, we just type this, then go into the script folder, scripts/insert.php. We separate with the comma. So this is the URL where the data will be sent to. From there it will be inserted into the database. Then the next thing is going to be the type. So the type that we're using is going to be the post. Then the next one is going to be the data that we are going to be sending, and it's going to be the form_data that we created. Then lastly, the callback that will be executed once this data has been sent. Call it success. For now, we'll just leave the function. We'll leave it empty. We're going to leave it empty, and it's going to take an argument data. So for now, we're just going to leave the success empty the way it is. So this is how you pass in the AJAX requests, or you use the AJAX method with the URL, which is going to specify the URL to send the request to, the type. In this case, we're using the post request, the data, and also the callback function that will be executed once this data has been sent. So in the next video, we'll create the PHP script or the PHP code inside the insert.php file.